our next panel. It's a panel conversation. We're looking into quantum technologies in practice. It's a reality check. And for this, I'll have on stage Dr. Peter Leibinger, Chairman of the Supervisory Board at Trumpf, and Dr. Michael Förtsch, CEO of Q.ANT. Q.ANT is a spin-off of Trumpf, founded in 2018. And they're focusing on photonic quantum technologies, developing quantum sensors and quantum computing chips.
Yeah, well, thank you for the kind introduction. It's a bit, the problem we're facing here is a bit the problem of someone preaching to the choir. Obviously, we're going to say that quantum technology is important and that we should all focus in it and invest in it, and you all know that already. But we'll do this anyway because I know there are some people in the audience who are a bit further away from this topic. When I was asked to speak here, I gladly accepted because, of course, this topic is very dear to my heart. And also because I found the format of doing this together with Michael quite interesting. Michael and I go back quite some way, and about 4.5 years ago, we together founded the company Quant, of which you are, of course, the CEO. So thanks, Michael, for being here with me today and doing this with me. One word about quantum effects, this show here. I think it's the right trade show at the right time and hopefully also in the right place. The last item, the place, we will have to discuss a bit what we jointly can do to make this really a fact, that this is the right place for this show. I do think it is, because in Stuttgart and around, there's quite a bit of quantum technology in research and also in industry. We all know that the phenomenon quantum technology seems to be a rather large one. We are told, and I believe this, that quantum technology will fundamentally change the world as it is. It will also change, and this is an interesting phenomenon on top, it will also change the way we see ourselves in this world. Of this, I'm convinced. I think, and I don't know the English term for this, I think quantum technology is somewhat of a Kopernikanische Wende, a fundamental change in how we see our world. And we are experiencing this live, which is, I think, something that is quite phenomenal to experience such a fundamental turn in history of the world live. From everything I know and from what I've seen, it is true that quantum technology will change our world, and seemingly the governments of the world, the politicians of the world, and also the venture capital industry feels this is true. Let me iterate some of the numbers in connection to that. Today, there are currently approximately 30 billion euros of funding projects in the Western world for quantum technology. There are about 2.6 billion in Germany alone, if you sum up the federal and the state initiatives. Then there's the European Quantum Flagship with €1 billion, the French program with about 1.8 billion euros, the Netherlands have a program with about $1 billion, the UK 1.3 billion. We're not so sure about what's going on in China, but if you sum up the information that is available, there must be anything between 10 and 15 billion euros available for quantum-related research in China alone. The venture capital industry picture is quite similar and no less impressive. In 2022, which was a pretty terrible year for VC, there were approximately 50 rounds of funding for quantum startups that totaled to about $1 billion. About half of these took place in the United States, not a surprise. To my knowledge, there are about 400 quantum-related startups worldwide, of which I personally would consider about half, about 200 serious contenders, which by itself, 200 serious contenders in quantum technology is a large number. probably more impressive even is that there are 40 companies worldwide who are past round B or beyond in financing, meaning these are rather mature startups already. There's a lot of news, of course. I don't think there's a day that goes by without news about breakthroughs in quantum computing. So obviously this all leads to incredible expectations, both in governments that are funding projects, as well as in the investor community who are spending money on this technology. And this, of course, and I've said this before in other locations, I see this as the classic dilemma of expectations and expectation management. And about this expectation aspect, I want to talk with Michael in just a minute. 1, 2, 3, 4 sentences before that to explain why I personally think that it is justified to have these expectations. If you look at quantum technology from a different angle, and you look at the 3 main applications, sensing, communication, and computing, you will realize that all 3 are, at the end, data technologies, data-driven technologies, or rather data-driving technologies. Sensing collects data, communication, of course, transmits data, and computing will compute data. And in all 3 areas, in sensing, communication, and computing, we are promised by the quantum technology field that fundamental changes will take place that will, as I said earlier, will change our world. Very simply, in sensing, we will be able to measure things to an accuracy unknown before or only possible with huge expenses. We are promised that there will be, and I see this happening already, there will be tiny and cheap quantum-based sensors, quantum field effect sensors, that will change data collection in the real world and enable us to control processes, to analyze the world around us like it was never before possible. Secondly, everybody talks about data security, about data security and the security of data transmission. With quantum communication, of course, this will no longer be an issue. It will no longer be an issue if a hacker or a government will be able to crack a code, because it's just physically, it will be physically impossible to interrupt transmission or to listen into transmission without being detected. Just like water doesn't flow uphill, it's a physical condition. And thirdly, of course, with quantum computing, we will be able to solve the problems that are solvable today in a much more energy efficient way, and we will in addition solve problems that are just unsolvable today. So in sensing and communication and computing based on quantum, we will change the data world as we know it today. But again, let's get back to this question of management of expectations. And I will play this ball elegantly into your field now, Michael. The question, of course, is these forecasts and promises that are made. Will they come true? When will they come true? And how much more money, that's a question I'm asking as an investor into your company, how much more money will it need to do this? Or is my family investing into a pipe dream?
Thank you,
Michael,
Peter.
The stage is yours.
Thanks. Thanks for your clear introduction, and also thank you for leaving me with the easy question. When are we commercializing it? Before I answer the personal question, have you invested wisely? Of course you did. I'd like to give a short overview over the whole community. And when I was preparing for today's presentation, I went back a bit in history. And This is a slide which I presented in 2019 on a physics conference on DPG, Deutsche Physikalische Gesellschaft. It was the autumn conference in Freiburg. And my message back then was, we have to manage expectations, both in terms of value proposition and time to market. And honestly, nothing has changed. I still think that this is true, and the forecast back then was, and it was a 15 times 15 years horizon. It's a 30 years development period. And the messages I put up back then was basically, in 15 years, quantum sensors, as you said, will have replaced classical sensors for high performance measurements. And quantum key distribution or quantum security will secure high-risk areas. And quantum computing will lead to the first calculational advantages. Now, jumping on, 30 years from now on, I'm still convinced that in 30 years, not all sensors will be quantum, that not all our data is secured with quantum technology, and not all computers are quantum. So it's an add-on, it's not a replacement. This is very important. 4 years later, a bit wiser and older, but mainly with a lot of experience with, from conversation with customers from this, I can share new opportunities or new insights, how I see the future. And before I do so, there is one comment. The next slides are very subjective. They're based on my personal experiments, and they don't have any mean that they are true. Right. You perfectly summarized it. It's all about data. It's about data processing, it's about data communication, and it's about data computation or data processing. So if we look on the data sensing, I'm pretty convinced today we are standing already in markets. There are niche markets, they are small, the sensors are expensive, but we have products. We have products which we can offer to customers, and a sensor price is arbitrarily high, between 20 kilo to 100 kilo, but they meet customer requirements, and we can continuously evolve this market, bring it to the progress. And if you see what kind of applications are going to be addressed, there are basically 3 fundamental points. First of all, the sensors will become smaller, the sensors will become cheaper, and they will become more volume. And the end game here is to meld the digital and the real world together. The brain-machine interface is nothing else but replacing the smartphone. It's not coming tomorrow, it's not coming the day after. I expect that something like that can be engineered over the next 20 years. But this means in 20 years from now on, it will become feasible that based on quantum technology, we can control machines just by our thoughts. And the journey has already begun. Now, with respect to quantum security, we are as well already in the markets. We are in the so-called post-quantum cryptography era. What it means is that there are already commercial products based on algorithms which are resilient against potential attacks from quantum computers in the future. And this is already forming a market. If we forecast what's going to happen over the next 20 years, it's going to evolve. We will see in the next years that dedicated devices like quantum random number generators will be integrated into data centers, followed by that we are going to secure peer-to-peer networks, and the ultimate game is that we secure the whole quantum internet. So basically that the communication over the World Wide Web is, as you said, physically proven to be secured. There is a lot of ifs in this equation, and there is a lot of things that can break, but it's a solid market which we can develop from a tutor's perspective. And the last one, it's the quantum computer or data processing market. That's the high roller, high gambling game. Honestly, it's the topic which drives most attention, where the most money flows to, and it's also the most immature market, sorry to say. We need quite some time to develop this, but I'm convinced that we are going to make it. And what I can see in a few years from today on is that we will have so-called application-specific devices. In the classical world, they are called ASICs. These are chips that carry out just exactly one individual task on a mainframe, integrated into that, and they're not called to be universal. And from this point on, we can evolve ourselves with the quantum computers into the data infrastructure in high-performance computing centers that we can start to see first. You said energy is one. The other thing is calculational speedups, that in the combination by using classical and quantum chips, that we see the next generation of speedup followed, that by the mid of the next decade, I expect personally that we see the first quantum computers as a standalone product, followed by the end of this decade, that we see a universal quantum computer. Now, why are these development cycles so long? Or do you want to ask this? Or?
Yeah.
I mean, but you're the investor.
No,
I know
but
you
I'm
need
going
to
to test your flexibility now because I'm completely going to go away from the prepared questions.
Okay, perfect.
And and ask you what I'm really interested in.
Okay, good.
So you said, I found your, just as a comment, I found your earlier comment interesting in such as that you said our investment into Quant was a good investment.
Sure.
So I'm not really interested in sunken costs. I'm more interested in what's coming, what additional investments are coming. In that context,
right.
What you're showing here is always the big price at the end. But I'm not interested in that at all. Also, but I'm much more interested in what's in 2 years rather than what's in 20 years. First question. Second question, in that context, when is not your company, but the industry, if I may call it that, when are they going to start selling to real customers and not to each other into laboratories? Because that is the decisive step. And again, back 20 years versus 2 years.
Yeah.
Give me a feeling for that. And of course, probably in quantum sensing, that will be the first market where we're not going to sell to each other, but to real customers. But where do you see the industry developing in that direction? And then after you answer it, I'll ask the question about the linear versus exponential development, because that's also an interesting one.
Perfect. So what you mean with real customers are companies.
Companies that, and stuff that goes into a real environment.
Companies that on their own need to be profitable. So this is
that too, but also the product going into a real environment where it needs to perform in a day-to-day situation.
Right. So again, let me answer it from a very subjective perspective, but for sensing, communication, and computing. For sensors, I see that in 2 years, we already see it now that we are selling it to customers which have to make profit with the products on their own. So this is something that exists already at the sensors business.
Okay.
It's not these 1 million pieces integrated into a smartphone, where the sensor itself is a cent. It's rather, for instance, process automation, where the sensor itself is rather bulky. It can cost 20,000 euros easily. It needs to be integrated by special technicians, and it's a one-self item to one customer. But this market is existing, and we see it growing over the years. For communication, it's exactly the same. We also see that already today, companies that on their own need to make benefits or profits are willing to spend money on quantum resilient algorithms. Banks, for instance, they pay money for that. They're a real customer in that. On the quantum computing, I'm a bit more critical. So for the course over the next years, I mainly see governmental institutions, research facilities as the primarily customer, which are mainly interested in the technology to learn and understand this technology, but not to make any commercial profit out of that.
But maybe shifting gears a little bit, same topic, but I was talking about a dilemma. The expectation, management of expectations dilemma that we're in this industry. There's a lot of money flowing in. People are expecting real results coming, and they won't come for some time. I think that's quite obvious. And there's going to be disillusionment. I think there's a second dilemma, which I have no solution for, honestly, which is, my last question about the 2 years and the 20 years was a classical reference to linear thinking, to the way I was brought up, that we need to reach customers, generate revenues, then reach break-even and grow. Of course, we have seen in the data world, in the .com world, and in the data-driven industry, that exponential business models prevail, and that a lot of deficit spending is tolerated, going into the billions, because the grand prize can only be reached on the platform side, of course, with the winner-takes-it-all approaches, but also in the sense that you have to reach a critical mass and a critical technology before you can even trade. Which of the two is true for the quantum world according to your experience? I tend to, you know that from our conversations, I tend to want to develop a real product, get it to the customer, generate revenues, and maybe we reach the grand prize later, but if not, we still survive. Do you think that's a wrong approach in quantum?
No. With respect to what you asked, the complex thing about quantum is the complexity in itself. It's basically a mixture out of software and hardware development. For the hardware development, I strongly believe that it will be a linear race.
Yeah.
We won't step out of this because the development cycles are as they are, and even if we are finished, it takes us yet again time to build up the production sites. So for all hardware-based quantum technologies, I don't see that there is really exponential market gain. For the algorithms, I'm a bit more optimistic. So once machines are built that can really deliver calculational advantage, for instance, then based on that, we can develop exponential growing software and algorithms business.
Okay, so that's a complex chicken and egg problem.
It's a complex chicken and egg problem, exactly.
Let's move to another topic. We as an industry have succeeded in convincing politics that a lot of money should flow into our industry and into our research. I personally am, of course, happy that the Land Baden-Württemberg has started this Quantum BW initiative, and I think it's the right thing to do this. However, when I look into the funding environment in Germany, at least, and I'm sure it's not very different in other places, at least in Europe, I'm not so sure we're doing this correctly. And I'll say what I mean by correctly. I think good funding policies lead to or have three characteristics. Firstly, they bring a community together. They bring together people who don't talk yet to each other, which is clearly happening here today and in our industry. Industry didn't talk to science, and science didn't talk to industry in quantum things. And even science didn't talk to each other because someone who did, I don't know, Ionenfallen surely didn't talk to supraleitend people. So, and that is happening now. First thing, the community building aspect. The second aspect, I think, is the development of a roadmap. Ideally, good funding and a good funding program leads to the development of a roadmap that the community, the industry believes in and adheres to. And the third aspect, I think, of good funding is competition, where the funding is set up in a way where after some time there are winners and losers, and the losers no longer get funding and the winners get more funding. Now, aspect 2 and 3 I don't see in our current funding schemes in Germany at least. What's your view on this?
So yeah, thanks. In general, I partially agree.
Okay.
First comment, I think building a community and being a competitor is somehow hard, but you're absolutely right. We need the competition. I mean, playing soccer, if we are all winners, doesn't make a lot of sense, right? So, and it's the same for any kind of technology. We need the technological race, and there must be also losers as there are winners. For the roadmap aspect, have a different opinion. I would say it's not maybe I misunderstood you, but I'm not seeing politicians in charge of building our roadmaps. They should rather basically put out the Man on the Moon project, deliver me a universal quantum computer by 2020, whatever, 2035, something around that, and then provide on the one side funding, but also the ecosystem building, helping us to support on an ecosystem level that we on ourselves define the roadmap.
I agree with that, but I don't see that happening. So the community says, let us do the roadmap, and I'm playing devil's advocate now, but they're not doing it. And I think, of course, I'm very much influenced by my experience in the semicon industry, and I know that's a completely different thing. And there we have Moore's law that pretty much sets the rhythm, and everything else has to fall into step. But you know, the chemistry and the machines and etc. But nevertheless, I think that if we had at least a rudimentary roadmap for certain core technologies in quantum technology, it would help also politics, the governments, to target their funding in a more accurate way.
Agree.
So what is to be done to get this roadmap?
First build the community, then build up the competition. We need to have also some kind of technologies which we are not longer funding in Germany. And then once we consolidated the big technological basis, then we can start to build roadmaps that are more holistically like that what you're talking about, the semiconductor industry. Because currently you have at least 5 to 6 platforms that are on their own in a competition and having their own roadmap in quantum computing. So you can't consolidate those ones on a meaningful level. So we need first to consolidate the basis, and then we can start acting on planning on the roadmaps.
All right. Well, thank you for that reply. I don't know about the moderation. What's the deal here?
The deal is we're looking a little bit at the time.
Yeah.
But I think we are fine. I don't get the signal for 1 or 2 questions, if there are questions in the room. Oh, there's one. Perfect.
Hello. So in my opinion, the development or bringing this quantum technology into products is a very, very big challenge. And what would you be willing to trade off to achieve this goal of bringing the quantum technology into products? So what would you be willing to trade to achieve your goal?
A very quick answer from my side. Now, from my experience with my discussions with Michael, I always push for, let's not achieve the next level of excellence and wait a few more months before we bring it to a customer. I'd rather bring a less mature, less performant product to a customer at an earlier time. Because in my experience, only when someone else works with you, what you have developed and built, will the learning start. That's at least the case for normal products.
Michael, you want to add something?
I mean, I could repeat yours.
Okay, so
because we're in line. So basically, I think the same.
Well, that's
so,
interesting because the discussion we have sound very different sometimes.
Because then we have different roles, right?
Okay. Other question?
No, but I think we can ask if there's another question in the room. I think you made your point very clear.
Thank you.
Perfect.
So thank you so much. Let's give them an applause. Thank you very much.